Fuzzy Belvedere, I want to get into a post to open up today's show from Clobriel. Now, Clobriel, if you don't know who he is a big member of the Xbox community. He is a big voice within the ranks of, the socials. Specifically, I follow him and he follows me on X. And he put out a post. And, you talked about Xbox being in the positive conversation recently. And I would say that's been going on all of 2025. It started in January with the Direct. It then continued with the release of Avowed in February. And every month to where we are right now, we're at the tail end of May. We haven't even gotten to the halfway mark of the year. And Xbox, when you talk about, Xbox Game Pass, you talk about the future of the brand, Xbox first party, there really isn't any negative things to say. Now, granted, I understand that, the third party move still, like I said earlier, it soured a lot of people, Fuzzy, and I understand it. Again, I made a post about it, and some guy, tried to, at me, if you will, about me, I'm glad that you like their new direction. And let's be clear, folks. I never said I liked it. I've come to accept it. There's a tremendous difference. If I was running Xbox, I don't know if I would have done that. But you got to admit they're making money, and not that it matters to me because they're not filling my coffers and they're certainly not paying your mortgage, Fuzzy. But the truth of the matter is that what happens with, profits come bigger investments. And that's what we're going to talk about now, because Xbox Game Pass ultimately is an investment that Xbox continues to pour games into. So let's start off with this post from Clobriel. And it says basically Xbox Game Pass continues strong. So this is just the end of the month through what we know is coming so far for June. And I'm going to read the list, folks. Metaphor ReFantazio is launching on the 29th of May. That was one of last year's biggest RPGs, and it is a phenomenal game. Another Atlas joint that a lot of people really enjoyed, and I would imagine that this is going to have a running sequel, trilogy, maybe even just continue on like the Persona games. Then you had the shock and awe that happened last week, Fuzzy. Warhammer 40K, the Space Marine Master Crafted Edition. And what's interesting, and I checked, up until 12:06 on today's date, which is May 26th, it's still only on Xbox and PC. There is no scheduled PlayStation 5 version of this game. I don't know why. There's been no talk about how this happened. But again, it happened literally the same day that the FTC, pulled their case against Xbox and ABK. Then you have the Altars. Now, I don't know so much about this game if it's for me, but I know a lot of people are excited. I saw a post from Paris Lilly talking about this game. He was very excited for it, which, again, he's an excitable kind of a dude. And he likes good games, and the way he was talking about it sounded it sounded like I have to check it out, right? FBC Firebreak is also launching into Game Pass on the 17th. And you also have now Lost in Random, the Eternal Dice, also on the 17th. And on the 19th, I think we saw this last year. It's called Rematch. Now, Rematch is a football game, but not, the NFL football, the soccer football. And again, in Game Pass day and date. You know why this is a very interesting conversation to have here today, Fuzzy Belvedere, is because not only are they already stacked for the month of June, this is before any conversation comes the way of the showcase, which is happening on the 8th. Right now, again, are there going to be any Game Pass announcements for June at the showcase? Well, that's obviously we're going to have to wait and find out, because so far this is what we got. But you do have to admit, Fuzzy, that the explosion of games in Xbox Game Pass in 2025 has been nothing short. I want to say that so far, it's probably the biggest year the service has ever had. Now, again, obviously, if you have a better thought and theory, drop it into the chat and we'll discuss it. But I gotta be honest with you, Fuzzy. This is only at the halfway mark.
Yeah.
And we still have 6 full months of releases, which we know that Gears of War Reloaded is in there. The next Call of Duty, whatever that's going to be, which again, it's the rumors that it's going to be Black Ops 7, which is a sequel to Black Ops 2, right? You also have the Outer Worlds 2. What else could they be releasing? Well, I would imagine there could be a bunch of other real big surprises in there. Fuzzy, I want to get your thoughts on the posting from Clobreel regarding there's basically the highlight of what Xbox Game Pass has coming, and of course, keeping into the conversation what they've already done, dude. Like it's just crazy.
Yeah, like each month Game Pass has been giving us some pretty decent bangers, not just first party, but also day and date third party, as well as some of the classics that, like we just had that whole 50 classics from Activision drop in there. Plus we're getting, whatever they unveil at the June showcase. But each month there's been at least 2 or 3 titles that I've been looking forward to playing that, some of the others kind of fall to the wayside as far as the backlog is concerned. But like we just had, Expedition 33, we just had Doom. Not too long ago, we had Avowed. And we're getting a lot of other
Oblivion.
Oh yeah, and Oblivion as well. And we're going to get was it Ninja Gaiden later this year, Outer Worlds later this year. We got the Gears Reloaded coming later this year. So they've been hitting us with remasters, new titles, day and date titles from third parties. Some of the most requested games from like the previous months or earlier this year, like with Metaphor coming next month. Like it's a nonstop, bombardment of games, which, going back to the old saying, everybody used to say Xbox has no games. It's quite the opposite this go around, so much to the point where I joke about that, they have to share some of the games that they have at this point. But yeah, I've been looking forward to Alters for a while. It has that weird sci-fi with cloning of yourself and stuff, where I guess each one of your clones will have some of your memories and some other special abilities or special talents that will be pertinent to your spaceship. But yeah, it's been nonstop games after games after games. And that even goes for some of the indie games, like was it Blueprints not too long ago, launched into the service. There's just been a plethora of games this entire year. And if this June announcement or the June announcement as far as the games coming next month and everything or any indication, I think we'll have a nice, well-rounded year end with what they show at the June showcase, filling out, some of the in-between months, whether you're looking forward to this year's Call of Duty or even next year's Call of Duty. I'm pretty sure we'll get to see more info on that, as well as all of the first party stuff. Like we've already had Ninja Theory hinting on, I guess, something to show that they'll have at the showcase, since they're doing like their internal updates or whatever, as far as showing the staff or the team where they're at on certain projects and stuff. So it's going to be a pretty interesting showcase, but June is already loaded. May has been loaded. April's been loaded. March has been loaded. I think about the only month that wasn't loaded was January, but I think a lot of people were still playing, Indiana Jones at that point. So yeah, you kind of had something to fall back on, and whatever else you may have gotten under the Christmas tree or the gift cards and stuff that you may have purchased some other games throughout the year. So yeah, it's been a pretty stacked year overall, but hey, June is no reason to slow down. So they decided to put Metaphor in there, and it's great to see that partnership that everybody kind of downplayed between Sega and Xbox is actually paying dividends. Like a lot of people were like, "Oh, that super game, it means nothing." And ever since then, we've been getting things like, was it the 2 Hospital or the museum thing, as well as a lot of other Sega related titles, some of their other studios that are falling under their heading and stuff like that have been coming into the service day and date, as well as some of their titles coming into the service thereafter. We got Persona, which people I think may have forgotten, which stands a chance of seeing maybe Persona 6 unveiled at the showcase, but we'll see. But we also had all the Yakuzas come to the service and stuff like that. So it's Yeah, it's been a pretty busy year. Like we thought 2023 was a pretty decent year. 2024 was an even better year, and 2025 has already outdone it, and we're not truly at the halfway mark. And 2026 is with some of the games that have been pushed into that year frame. It's already seeming like it's going to be a pretty stacked year to begin with, and that's not even including all the third party stuff that we know is coming. So, man, it's been overwhelming. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, look, what we got to, like when you take a step back and, you talk about the value proposition, this could not have come at a better time for gamers, right? And I say that because obviously there's going to be a conversation to be had when all games go to $80. Like right now, it's certain games on Switch too. Xbox has already announced their games are going to be going up in price. I mean, PlayStation's going to get there at some point. When, we don't know. I would imagine that you're going to see the next Madden, for instance, which is only going to be next generation only for the first time. That's probably going to be an $80 game because everyone is going to be buying it. And there's going to be a lot of people moving from PS4 and PS4 Pros and Xbox One S and X's to, of course, the newer hardware. And when people move, people are going to be met with higher prices. So consoles are going to be higher. And I know that there's a running rumor that VGC posted about Sony doing like a $50 price reduction that has not been official yet. It'd be big for Sony. I mean, they're going to sell a whole bunch of consoles if they do. But again, we'll see whether or not that happens. Or, of course, they raise the price like everyone else because there's still stuff going on around the world that requires this price increase, which I am never in favor of. But, just getting back to the games factor, folks, this is such an interesting place where we find ourselves. And I know that we're joking, like there are real world problems. And most people you talk to on the socials, Fuzzy, have to go right back to, look, I'm going to be honest with you. There's just too many games. Yeah. And that is a magnificent problem to have. And why we continue to talk about Xbox Game Pass, because I know there's going to be some people in the chat like, my God, these guys are talking about Game Pass again. Well, you should be talking about it. And I'll say this. Again, folks, I don't get a dime from Xbox to tell you about Game Pass. I know that as a retiree who has a pension that's magnificent but has a ceiling, Game Pass is great. I want to get your thoughts on that for a second because the value proposition is something to be had. And again, you got to remember, this is coming off a year. Oh, I say a year. The first 5 months of 2025 that has been ridiculous. And also, again, we're coming up on June's showcase, which we are going to get the rest of the roadmap for 2025, which is expected to be bombastic at least. Not even at best, at least bombastic. Just based on some of the first party stuff. And then the third party stuff, again, why Game Pass? Well, if you're a developer, you're a publisher, whether you be big or small, who gets the most conversation every month there's a game put into the service? It's not Nintendo's service. It's not PlayStation's service. It's everyone is talking about Xbox Game Pass. And if your game is put into this service, people are likely to download and play. You are also likely to get a bag of money from Xbox, right? And obviously, there's no guarantee that you're going to sell your game on whatever, even if you go multi-plat. Let's say, for instance, you're here, there, and everywhere. That's great, but you're battling hundreds, if not thousands of other games. So when you go into Xbox Game Pass, folks, you're not just winning as a consumer. You're winning as a dev because you don't have to fight against potentially hundreds of other games for someone to be like, oh, look, this game looks interesting. Let's get your thoughts on that, man.
Well, the big thing on the value, especially with the consideration that some titles will go to $80, like if you're the type of person that only buys 2 or 3 titles, then yeah, maybe it's not the best value for you. If you're only playing Madden, if you're only playing COD, or maybe both of those, then you might be better off just buying those 2 games. But when you look at what, like, if the person that would buy 3 or 4 games is looking at spending over the year versus what will be in the service, or at least on the EA titles, having early access to, already having, COD come into the service, no additional charge, plus the first party stuff from Xbox. I think the value speaks for itself. Where if you're a gamer that doesn't quite have the endless budget or the bottomless pockets to buy all the games as soon as they come out, I think Game Pass is going to be the way to go. But you could also wait for sales. But then again, on the flip side of things, this is why I use Game Pass more so than anything. I don't have to pay for the game when it launches. I can get it on sale later, but I get to play it the day it comes out. Or for a few bucks more, doing the upgrade, I have the early access to it. So you don't have to be outside the conversation of what the latest or dropped games are from Xbox. And in a lot of cases, some of the smaller third parties, which from the dev standpoint, the third parties are looking at, like Capcom, for example, Path of the Goddess. That was one of those games where they weren't quite sure how well it would do. It didn't do quite as well as maybe they had hoped, but I'm pretty sure they made a lot of their initial investment back by being in Game Pass and being on other platforms at the same time. Same thing with their Dino Crisis like game that they had. But there are other titles that go in there, get the bag of money from Microsoft. We get to play it in Game Pass. It still gets to sell well on other platforms, whether it's PC or other consoles, like Expedition 33. And that dev, the main thing that they credit with Game Pass or Xbox in general is just being part of the dev direct. Mm-hmm. It got to be in place or in the same conversation with games like Doom. And that being a AAA, multi-platform title, that's going to have its own draw, but also being in that same showcase or in that same spotlight, it brings more attention to them. So from the dev standpoint, it's almost like, I wouldn't say free marketing, but it is a better way of marketing. You have your normal advertising dollars, but you also have a bigger spread of word of mouth of the game, because you have more players that may not have been able to try it or may have been on the fence. Now they get to try it because it's part of their subscription service. And if they're, praising it to the heavens, then it's going to definitely carry over to other platforms. And more people are going to want to know, well, what was this game like? Or why is everybody talking about this particular game? But on the same, standpoint, if the game isn't that great, it could backfire. But even games that have had like a rocky road, like, what was it? Outriders. It had a lot of buzz about it. Whether it was the dev that dropped the ball or Square with the financing and not allowing them to do the updates on a timely manner, that may have hurt things. But I think in the grand scheme of things, People Can Fly will be better off in the long term, possibly, one, separating themselves from Square, and two, knowing that, something in Game Pass will get them, with them being self-published, hopefully at that point, a lot more of their revenue back in their own pocket, as opposed to waiting for Square to kind of do a third-party payment thing for them. But yeah, Game Pass in general, great value for consumers that are on a budget, or even if you're not on a budget, aren't sure of a game but want to try it out. And once you find that if you like that game, you can go ahead and buy it at a discount. That's what I wind up doing most of the time. When it comes to just gaming in general, not everybody is able to get every platform, but you're able to get like Game Pass on your TV or your existing PC or laptop or tablet by subscribing to Ultimate. You'll still be able to have access to those games, be it by streaming, but there's still access. And if you're on PC, pretty much PC Game Pass is a nice alternative. Not saying that, it's
certainly cheaper
above Steam, but it's definitely a cheaper approach, where you may not get the full library that you see on Steam, but you do get a lot of gems that Steam has as well, and you're able to get them in that service. So if you're a PC player and you don't mind having additional launchers, which, I'm pretty sure there's quite a few people that have the Epic launcher and just build up that library and maybe not necessarily purchase.
You mean the free game library?
Yeah, that's another nice alternative. As far as for being on a budget, you have access to a lot of the games that might not be given free on Epic, but you see a lot of people buzzing about on Steam, and you're in a subscription service to be able to have access to it without shelling out the full price at launch, and you can always pick it up on sale at a later date. So, it's a win-win all around for gamers as well as devs for the most part. And I can't be happier for it that they have something like this right now. So,
yeah, again, it's a service that you can subscribe to or not. Obviously, it's getting a little bit harder to get those $10 cards versus the regular price cards. It was that Microsoft's plan all along. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? They get you into the door, and once you're here, you never leave, right? We've known some people to leave for obvious reasons. Some people are just disenchanted with the brand. People were soured by the third party marketing thing that they're doing. I get all of that. I just think that, again, this is just me talking out loud. I don't know how you, as a consumer, not a gamer, not a PlayStation guy or gal or otherwise, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, PC. I find it just hard to honestly understand how you don't look at Xbox Game Pass and think that there isn't value enough there to be a part of the service. Now, granted, is it big enough, Fuzzy, to get someone to switch sides? I don't know. Some people buy a PlayStation for The Last of Us and God of War and Horizon. And if you do, those are all great games. So you're going to enjoy yourself. Now they have Xbox putting a ton of games on there. So maybe you don't need to move, and no one's suggesting that you should. But if you don't mind buying the games, then you just buy the games. Again, hard to argue why that if you are a PlayStation gamer, and we know who we're talking about, who has the accessibility to a rig, why you wouldn't have Xbox Game Pass for PC, because then you've officially won, at least in my opinion. You got your PlayStation, you're enjoying your console of choice, and of course you are then using your rig that you told us you spent $5,000 on, and you're getting Xbox Game Pass, and you're doing even better because it's cheaper on PC Game Pass than it is on console. So you're not paying for online, and you're paying a cheaper price, which is great, right? So it's a double win for you. And I see people arguing that. As a matter of fact, I saw a posting in here. Who was it? It was Nino Vestic, our generous friend, all the way from Hawaii. He says this, ladies and gentlemen, and this is a running conversation to be had. It's funny how people think you can't buy games if you use Game Pass. Clowns. And that's the other thing. You can buy every game that's on Xbox Game Pass at a discount. So if you are into, quote unquote, owning your games, you can own your games. If there's a game, like for instance, did I absolutely need to buy Expedition 33 at Full Boat? I did not. Did I? Yes, I did. I made a conscious choice to support the dev because they're a small indie team. I bought the game. I didn't have to because it was in the service. I could have simply just paid the $10 to get the upgrade and be done with it. But I wanted to buy the rather than $49, I bought the $60 edition because I get so much value in Game Pass. Me helping out a dev, at least in my opinion, is well worth the money, right? So that's a me choice. Did you have to do that? No, you can simply just play through your service, and you're not doing anything wrong. You are paying for your service like you do for HBO Max or Peacock or Amazon Prime, whatever your service of choice is. You're paying for that service. So when you watch a movie that was in theaters 45 days ago, do you feel bad that you didn't give that money, your ticket price, to the movie studio? You shouldn't. You're paying for a service.